He tried to erase me while I was still breathing. My own son forged my name, my mind, my past, turned love into paperwork. But let me tell you something, when a mother's silence breaks, even liars start praying for thunder instead of truth. The morning light in Pittsburgh always carried the taste of iron soft gold over rust. Agnes O'Malley, 76, stood by her window with a chipped mug of tea, steam mingling with her breath. The old steel mill siren wailed in the distance, ghostly now that the furnace was long shut. But Agnes still rose at 6. Habit was harder to close than a factory gate. She moved with deliberate calm, opening the tin box on her kitchen counter, the one labeled Receipts and Mercy. Inside lay decades of canceled checks, folded statements, a ledger bound in cracked leather. Her fingers trembled only slightly as she turned the pages. Every entry was a memory paid for in quiet installments. Sean's first car repair, his rent after the divorce, the therapy bills he never then. The phone rang, unknown number. Mrs. O'Malley, a polite young voice said, "This is Ms. Varga from Iron City Bank. We received a document this morning authorizing a withdrawal from your 401k under medical exemption, signed on your behalf." Agnes frowned. "Yes, ma'am. The letter states you've been diagnosed with early-stage cognitive decline. It includes a doctor's certification." For a long breath, Agnes said nothing. Her eyes drifted to the photo of her late husband in the hallway, his face dusted by sunlight, forever kind. Who filed it? A pause crackled down the line. The power of attorney was submitted by Sean O'Malley. Agnes placed the cup down slowly, porcelain against steel countertop. The sound was small, final, like a gavel. "Thank you," she said, voice steady. "Please flag the account. No one touches a dime unless I'm there in person." The Iron City Bank branch sat at the corner of 5th and Braddock, an old brick building that used to hold steel paychecks and now held excuses. The autumn light filtered through the glass doors, pale and cold, bleaching everything it touched. Agnes O'Malley pushed through the revolving doorcoat, buttoned to her chin, hair pinned tight like armor. Inside the room hummed with muted urgency, printers ticking, pens scratching, the distant sigh of an espresso machine. Ms. Varga, the young woman who'd called earlier, rose from behind her desk. She couldn't have been more than 30, with sharp eyes softened by concern. "Mrs. O'Malley, thank you for coming in," she said, guiding her toward a seat upholstered in black leather that squeaked slightly. Agnes sat clutching her handbag, every motion deliberate. Her gaze swept the room, the cameras in the corners, the faint reflection of herself in the glass divider. Strong posture, steady eyes. Not someone incapacitated, someone waiting to be underestimated. "I brought the document," Ms. Varga said, sliding a folder across the polished desk. "It came through our system this morning." Agnes flipped it open. Her name printed neatly, her address correct, her date of birth precise. And at the bottom, in bold strokes, her supposed signature, crooked, childish. She felt the chill crawl up her arm. "That's not mine," she said. "I didn't think so." Ms. Varga lowered her voice. "The physician listed here, Dr. Carl R. Denning, retired 3 years ago. We confirmed it with the state medical board this morning." Agnes blinked once. Slowly. "So the letter is fraudulent?" "Yes, ma'am. And whoever submitted it used a copy of an old ID card to verify identity. The power of attorney form appears notarized, but the stamp is blurred." Agnes leaned closer, reading every word as if memorizing the enemy's handwriting. Then she closed the folder carefully. "I want this account locked down," she said. "No online access, no secondary contact, no wire transfers. If I want a withdrawal, I'll drive here and sign with this hand." She held it up steady. "Yes, ma'am." Ms. Varga nodded quickly, impressed by the firmness that didn't need volume. "We'll flag all activity under Mr. Sean O'Malley's name and report the attempted breach to our fraud unit." For a second, silence filled the space between them. The ticking of the wall clock felt louder than the city outside. "Do you want to press charges?" Ms. Varga asked gently. Agnes's lips thinned. "Not yet. I just want the record clean. Truth first, justice later." The banker nodded. She printed several forms: revocation, security hold, verbal, password authorization. Agnes signed each line with unwavering strokes, her signature cutting across the page like a seam welded shut. When she was done, she pushed the papers back. "You keep copies," she said. "I'll take mine. I don't want anything vanishing conveniently." Ms. Vargas smiled faintly. "Understood." Agnes rose, adjusting her coat. Her reflection in the window looked taller than she remembered, maybe because she wasn't bending anymore. Mrs. O'Malley, the banker, said as she escorted her out. "It's rare to see someone handle this so calmly." Agnes paused at the door. "I lived 40 years with a man who fixed steel beams by hand. Calm doesn't mean weak. It means I know where to hit." She stepped out into the wind, the city vibrating with distant traffic and construction noise. Across the street, a bus roared by, advertisement pealing, children's laughter echoing from inside. She tightened her scarf. For the first time that morning, the chill felt like clarity. The house was still, save for the slow click of Agnes's heels across the linoleum. Afternoon light slanted through the kitchen window, turning the air into dust and memory. She set her handbag down, took a steadying breath, and pulled the old tin box from the counter once more. Inside lay the ledger, Receipts and Mercy, its pages yellowed and fragile. She opened it where the ribbon marker rested, pen tracing down the columns of neat handwriting. Sean O'Malley, football socks, $12. Sean O'Malley, rent after college, $480. Sean O'Malley, divorce settlement, $1,200. Line after line, a lifetime of rescues disguised as generosity. The rhythm of her reading slowed. Beneath the old entries were two new ones, both in a handwriting that wasn't hers. Transfer receipts printed from online banking, $3,500. Equipment investment, $100. Loan reimbursement. Date circled in red. The same week Sean had told her over dinner, "Work's been tough lately, Mom. Just trying to stay afloat." Her fingers tightened around the page until it crinkled. Agnes closed the ledger, exhaled through her nose. "Stay afloat," she whispered. "By drowning me." She rose, walked to the small cabinet by the window, and retrieved a photo of Sean at 17, mud on his knees, smile full of promise. She studied it a moment, then placed it face down beside the ledger. Outside, the wind rattled the steel chime her husband had built years ago. The notes rang hollow, like a warning she'd ignored for decades. Agnes sat back down, pen poised above a clean sheet. This time the title was new, "What's Mine?" And under it she began listing not what she'd given, but what she still had the power to take back. By the time Nora's car rattled into the driveway, the sky had turned a dull gray blue. The air smelled faintly of iron rain and old chimneys. Agnes heard the familiar squeak of the front gate and the quick, uneven footsteps of youth. "Grandma in here?" Agnes called, voice steady but softer than usual. Nora appeared at the kitchen doorway, her curls damp from drizzle, holding a small pot wrapped in a towel. "Brought soup. You forgot lunch again, didn't you?" Agnes smiled faintly. "Maybe." The young woman set the pot on the counter, removing the lid with the ease of routine. Steam rose, chicken time and comfort. She noticed the open ledger on the table, pages marked with fresh ink, and the photo lying face down. "What's that?" Nora asked gently. "History," Agnes said. "And tuition for hard lessons." Nora frowned, sensing the weight behind the words. "Is this about Dad?" Agnes met her eyes, clear gray, meeting earnest brown. "He tried something foolish. Something that could have cost me everything." Nora sat across from her, silent for a long moment. "He said he was about to invest big." She hesitated. "He even joked that his luck was finally changing." Agnes's jaw tightened. "At my expense, it seems." The clock ticked between them like a metronome for restraint. Then Nora reached out, covering her grandmother's hand with both of hers. "You're not alone in this, Grandma." Agnes's eyes softened. "I know, dear. But sometimes standing alone is how you make them see you again." Outside, thunder rumbled far off over the river. Inside, two generations sat across a small table, one learning, one remembering, both realizing that blood could wound and also heal. The next morning, a faint drizzle turned the streets of Pittsburgh into a maze of silver reflections. Agnes was halfway through her tea when the landline rang, its sharp tone slicing through the quiet. "Mrs. O'Malley. This is Richard Duarte from the Steel Mills HR department. Sorry to bother you so early." She straightened. "I retired 10 years ago, Mr. Duarte." Yes, ma'am, he said, hesitating. That's actually why I'm calling. We received an email request last week using your old company login credentials asking to transfer your 401k funds due to medical incapacity. Agnes closed her eyes briefly. Let me guess. Submitted by my son, A. Silence, then a cautious. The email came from a personal address, but the signature line says, Sean O'Malley acting under power of attorney. She felt her pulse steady like a drumbeat made of steel. And Mr. Duarte exhaled. Our system flagged it because it came through a non-corporate server. The IP trace links to a residence in Mount Lebanon. I thought you should know before we escalate. Mount Lebanon, Sean's house. The confirmation landed heavy, expected, yet bitter. Thank you, Richard, she said, her tone measured. Don't delete anything. I'll be there tomorrow morning. I want copies. Of course, Mrs. O'Malley. And for what it's worth. I'm sorry. Nobody deserves this kind of betrayal. Agnes looked toward the window. The mill chimneys loomed like ghosts in the distance, their rusted frames catching pale light. Don't be sorry, she murmured. Just keep your record straight. Truth leaves fingerprints. When she hung up, the house felt heavier but not unbearable. She reached for her notepad and wrote the next line under What's Mine evidence. The law office of Marla Keene sat above a bakery that smelled of sugar and smoke. Two things Agnes hadn't tasted in months. The stairs creaked beneath her careful steps, each one sounding like a small declaration of intent. Marla looked up from a stack of folders when Agnes entered. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, steady-voiced, a woman who'd spent years fighting for workers who couldn't fight for themselves. Mrs. O'Malley, she greeted warmly. It's been a long time. Too long, Agnes replied, removing her gloves. I need your help again. This time, it's family. They sat across the desk, paper between them like a battlefield map. Agnes recounted everything: the forged doctor's note, the email, the false claim of incapacity. Marla listened without interrupting, only tapping her pen once when the name Sean O'Malley came up. When the story ended, the lawyer leaned back. You know, this isn't just financial fraud, she said carefully. It qualifies as elder exploitation. You can press criminal charges if you want. Agnes met her gaze. Not yet. I don't want revenge, I want control back. Marla nodded. Then here's where we start. We revoke any prior powers of attorney, freeze all accounts, and prepare a living trust, your name, your rules. And if he tries again, we'll have a paper trail ready to bite. A thin smile touched Agnes's lips. I always liked the sound of iron biting back. Marla chuckled. Then let's sharpen the teeth. As she signed the first document, Agnes felt something subtle shift inside her. Not anger, not grief, but the quiet satisfaction of turning fear into evidence. The church smelled of lemon polish and candle wax, clean, calm, forgiving. Agnes walked down the narrow aisle, her cane tapping softly against the marble floor, though she didn't truly need it. The choir rehearsed in the loft above, their voices floating like fragile glass. Pastor Collins spotted her from the altar and smiled, the same gentle smile he'd worn at her husband's funeral years ago. Mrs. O'Malley, he said, spreading his arms. It's been too long since I've seen you in this house. I've been keeping to myself, she said, sliding into the front pew. Too many echoes in my own. He chuckled softly, then sat beside her. I hear you've been going through a difficult time. Agnes studied the stained glass window above them, St. Peter holding a set of keys, halo cracked by age. Difficult, she repeated. That's one word for it. Pastor Collins folded his hands. Your son came by last week. He asked for prayers. He said you'd been confused lately, misplacing things, accusing people unfairly. The air between them froze. Did he, now? Agnes said evenly. The pastor nodded, hesitant. I told him God teaches us patience, that families sometimes lose their way, but can always find grace again. She turned toward him, voice quiet but razor sharp. Grace doesn't mean blindness, Reverend. He blinked. Of course not. Agnes leaned forward, eyes hard beneath the soft glow of colored glass. Then don't let him turn this place into his stage. I've made mistakes, yes, but losing faith in lies isn't one of them. The pastor swallowed, embarrassed. I didn't mean to. I know, she interrupted gently. You're a good man. But you listen to confessions for a living. Start believing mine, not his. From the choir loft above the organ began a low, trembling chord. The hymn swelled sweet, sorrowful, endless. Pastor Collins sighed. You've always been strong-willed, Agnes. She stood smoothing her coat. Strong-willed women built this town, Reverend. The men just wrote their names on the bridges. He smiled sadly. Will you pray with me? She paused at the end of the pew, glancing back. I already did. I asked for clarity, and he gave me proof. As Agnes stepped out into the gray light, the bells began to ring, each toll echoing through her chest like the hammer of a steel press. The sound wasn't holy, it was defiant. And as the last note faded, she whispered to herself, let them keep praying. I'm done kneeling. The house was dark except for the warm cone of light spilling from the kitchen lamp. Agnes sat at the table, tea long gone cold, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Outside rain tapped against the windowpane like a polite reminder that even storms knock before entering. Her phone buzzed once, then again, then 5 times in a row. Sean. The first message came like a plea. Mom, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Can we just talk? She didn't reply. The next arrived seconds later. You're letting other people get into your head. That lawyer is just after your money. Agnes watched the screen, her reflection warped in the glass-tired eyes, unflinching. Then another. I was trying to protect you. You forget things, you panic. I was helping. She set the phone down, the blue glow painting her face like a stage light before judgment. She picked up her pen instead, adding a new line to her notepad, gaslight record every word. The phone buzzed again, longer this time. She glanced at the message, reading aloud softly. If you keep pushing this, Mom, people will start asking questions. I can make them believe you're not well. Her grip tightened. For a heartbeat, she felt the old ache, motherly guilt, the instinct to shield him from consequence. But guilt was just the leash he'd been yanking for years. Slowly, deliberately, she opened her text app and scrolled up years of, can you send me a little help? And, you know I love you, right? Messages stacked like IOUs written in affection. She took screenshots of everyone, evidence, truth archived. Then she typed, don't contact me again unless it's through my lawyer. She hovered over send, her thumb trembled, then stilled. Click. The phone went silent, but the quiet didn't bring peace. It brought awareness, sharp, surgical. In the reflection of the window, her face looked older, yes, but steadier. The kind of face that's done asking for permission to be believed. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming a rhythm against the glass that sounded almost like applause. The steel mill looked different in daylight, emptier, quieter, but still humming with the ghosts of work. Its smokestacks stood like relics, rib cages of a city that refused to die. Agnes hadn't stepped inside the HR building in nearly a decade, not since her retirement party, where they gave her a bouquet and a gold pen that stopped writing a week later. Now she was back, armed, not with nostalgia, but with truth. Mr. Duarte met her at the glass door, a nervous smile plastered under the flicker of the neon sign. Mrs. O'Malley, he greeted, gesturing her inside. Detective Ruiz is here from the Insurance Fraud Division. He just wants to clarify a few details. Agnes nodded. Let's clarify the hell out of them. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, pale and unforgiving. The office smelled of paper, printer ink, and cold coffee. Agnes took a seat across from the 2 men, the only woman in the room, small in stature but iron in posture. Detective Ruiz, mid-40s, clean suit, tired eyes, had that look of someone who's seen too many families fall apart over greed. Mrs. O'Malley, he began, opening a folder. You're aware that an email was sent under your name, requesting liquidation of your retirement account. I am, she said, steady. Good. We've reviewed the attachment's medical certification, notary approval, and assigned power of attorney. Would you take a look and tell me if this signature is yours? He slid the documents across the desk. The paper whispered against the surface. Agnes adjusted her glasses and leaned in. Her name sat there, crooked and wrong. A child's imitation of authority. That's not mine, she said. Whoever wrote that's never held a pen like they meant it. Mr. Duarte exhaled softly, relief mingling with unease. Ruiz turned a page showing the physician's declaration. According to this, you were examined by Dr. Carl R. Denning at Allegheny Neurology on August 14th. It claims early-stage dementia. Agnes's brows rose. That's creative. Carl Denning retired 3 years ago. He sends me Christmas cards from Florida. Ruiz looked up. You're certain I was his patient once after my fall in 2019? I attended his retirement luncheon. He cried over carrot cake. The detective's pen froze mid-note. He exchanged a glance with Duarte. Mr. Duarte cleared his throat. We actually tried calling the clinic's number this morning. It's been disconnected. The location is an empty lot now, was sold to a real estate group last year. Agnes folded her hands on the desk. So my doctor is signing letters from a ghost clinic. Ruiz's expression hardened. That's not just fraud. That's a felony-level forgery. Whoever arranged this used outdated credentials and an invalid notary stamp. The hum of the fluorescent lights deepened as if the room itself inhaled. Agnes leaned back, letting the silence press against the truth. Then you already know who did it. Ruiz hesitated. The sender's email was registered under your son's name, but technically it could have been anyone using his address. Detective, she said quietly. I changed his diapers. I know the pattern of his lies better than my own handwriting. Duarte shifted guilt written across his face. I'm sorry, Mrs. O'Malley. I didn't want to believe it when the alert came through. You were one of the most trusted employees here. Agnes gave a small, wry smile. Trust isn't what it used to be, Richard. It used to mean something you built. Now it's just something people forge. Ruiz closed the folder. We'll need your permission to submit a fraud alert to the state board and notify your financial institution. It won't be public yet. She nodded. Do it. And make sure the records list him by name, Thomas Sean O'Malley. No initials, no anonymity. Let the truth carry the full weight. The detective scribbled her consent, then looked up. Do you want to pursue charges? Agnes took her time answering. She looked past them to the window where the skeleton of the mill rose against a gray sky. For a moment she could almost hear the clang of steel beams, her husband's laugh echoing down the factory line, the heartbeat of labor. Not yet, she said finally. But I want every piece of paper ready for when I do. Ruiz nodded slowly. Understood. As the men exchanged documents, Agnes stood. Her joints cracked softly, but she refused to show pain. She reached for the folder labeled Fraud Report and ran her finger along the spine, rough edges, imperfect binding yet solid. You know, she said, glancing at Ruiz. I spent 30 years in that plant. You learn a lot, watching molten metal cool. The detective tilted his head. What do you mean? You can pour it wrong, shape it wrong, even drop it, but once it hardens, she tapped the folder. It stays that way. Evidence is like that. Once it cools, it's unbreakable. Duarte looked at her half in awe. You're tougher than most of my guys in helmets? Agnes smiled thinly. That's because I don't confuse noise with strength. As she walked toward the door, Ruiz called after her. We'll keep you updated, ma'am. She paused at the threshold, turning just enough for her voice to carry back through the hum of lights. I'll update myself. You just keep the files clean. Outside, the wind was cold, but the sun had begun breaking through the clouds, slicing the steel-gray sky into fragments of light. Agnes pulled her coat tighter, her steps slow but certain. In her bag lay the signed report copies of every fraudulent page and a single truth she'd waited a lifetime to understand. Steel isn't born strong, it's made strong by fire. And now so is she. Night spread like oil across the windows, leaving only the soft pool of lamplight on Agnes's desk. The folder from the mill sat open beside her papers, neatly aligned corners squared, as if precision could somehow contain betrayal. She traced a finger over the notary stamp at the bottom of the forged form, a smudge of ink, blurred edges, but still legible enough to read a name: Joseph K. Warren, Notary Public, State of Ohio. Ohio. Not even Pennsylvania. Her brows drew together. She turned on her aging laptop, the fan whirring like a wheezy old friend, and began to search. A few keystrokes later, the screen lit up with a state record license suspended 2020. Unauthorized activity, falsified documents. Bingo, she muttered half to herself, half to the late-night ghosts of the house. She scrolled further, finding a small local news headline, "Disgraced notary, accused of certifying divorce papers across state lines." The client's name was hidden under redaction, but the case number wasn't. Agnes copied it, searched again, and froze. O'Malley, v. O'Malley, 2020. Her son's divorce. Evelyn's name right there. Black ink against white background. The same notary. The same crooked stamp. Agnes leaned back in her chair, heart beating slow and heavy. "So that's how far you'd reach Evelyn," she whispered. "And Sean, you followed her lead like a child with scissors." She clicked print and listened to the machine grind out evidence one page at a time, the sound rhythmic, mechanical, almost comforting. With each sheet sliding out, the pieces aligned: the doctor, the email, the notary, all threads of the same web. When the last page landed on the tray, Agnes gathered the papers carefully, slid them into a clean envelope, and wrote across it in blue ink, "Fraud chain, preliminary." Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She locked her desk drawer and pocketed the key. Her gaze drifted to the window. Across the street, the neighbor's porch light flickered, moths swarming in a desperate dance around it. "Keep chasing the glow," she murmured. "You'll burn before I do." The clock struck 11. Somewhere in the city, freight trains rumbled over rusted rails, carrying tons of steel through the night. Agnes smiled faintly. Steel forged by fire, tested by time, just like her resolve. She turned off the lamp, letting the room fade to shadow, leaving only the hum of the printer cooling down like a machine, finally at peace after doing what it was built to do: record the truth. The morning came pale and reluctant, dragging gray light across the kitchen tiles. Agnes stood by the stove, waiting for her kettle to sing, when the knock came firm, rehearsed, too polite to be innocent. She didn't flinch. "Door's open," she said. Sean stepped inside like he owned the air. Same cologne as always, cheap confidence mixed with guilt. He glanced around the kitchen, pretending to see it for the first time. "You've redecorated?" "No," Agnes said, pouring water into her mug. "I just stopped cleaning around ghosts." He gave a short laugh, uneasy. "Mom, come on. You've been acting like I did something horrible. All I did was file a few papers to help manage things. You've been forgetting stuff lately." "Really?" she said, evenly stirring her tea. "Funny, I don't recall forgetting the part where you forged my name." He stiffened, the mask slipping for half a heartbeat. "That's not fair. I was trying to protect you." Evelyn said, "Stop." Her voice sliced through his excuse. "Don't hide behind her skirts. You're 44, Sean. If you can sign my name, you can own your choices." He exhaled sharply, eyes darting to the dining table. "This is ridiculous. We're family. You're making this bigger than it needs to be." Agnes walked to the drawer, pulled out the envelope labeled "Fraud chain, preliminary," and set it down in front of him. "It's already big, Sean. The notary you used suspended in Ohio. The doctor retired 3 years ago, and the email came straight from your Wi-Fi router." He blinked, color draining. "You what? Mr. Duarte sent me the logs? You used my trust like a shovel, digging your own grave." For a moment he was speechless, then tried a crooked smile. "You'd really turn on your own son after everything I've done for you?" Agnes tilted her head. "Everything you've done to me, you mean?" He slammed a hand on the table, making the mug tremble. "You don't get it, do you? I'm drowning. You have enough to help." She looked him dead in the eye. "And I did. My entire life. Every paycheck, every sacrifice, every lie I told to keep your image clean. You're not drowning, Sean. You're addicted to the feeling of someone else saving you." The words hung there, thick as smoke. His shoulders sagged. For the first time, he looked small. "Mom, please, don't take this to court. We can fix it quietly. I'll stop everything." Agnes placed her hand on the file, calm and final. "I'm not the one who needs fixing." Sean's jaw tightened, voice lowering. "If you do this, people will think you've lost it. I can make sure of that." Agnes smiled faintly, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Then make sure they spell my name right." The kettle whistled, sharp, shrill, breaking the silence like a verdict. She poured more tea, steady hands against the trembling sound of her son's breathing. When she looked up again, he was already walking to the door. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. She didn't answer. The door shut behind him, and for a long moment only the sound of the cooling kettle filled the air. Agnes exhaled slowly, the steam curling around her face like absolution. She reached for her notepad and wrote a new word under evidence: courage. The sky was bruised pink when Nora's car screeched into the driveway. Agnes barely had time to open the door before her granddaughter burst in, phone clutched tight, face pale with disbelief. "Grandma, Evelyn just called me," Nora gasped. "She said you're unwell, that you've been hallucinating." Agnes's expression didn't change, only the muscle near her jaw ticked. "Did she now?" Nora nodded, trembling. "She said you're rewriting the family history, that you're being manipulated by outsiders. Her voice broke, she even said Dad's just trying to protect you from yourself." Agnes sighed, motioning her to sit. "They're scrambling, darling. People who lie for a living panic when truth starts talking louder." Nora dropped into the chair, eyes wide. She sounded angry, Grandma, like she wasn't even trying to hide it. "She said if you don't withdraw whatever complaint you filed, things will get ugly." Agnes poured tea, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. "Then ugly it will be. I've seen uglier." Nora leaned forward. "There's more. Evelyn said something about Dad borrowing from the wrong people. Nis." She laughed and said, "Maybe if your grandma hadn't frozen everything, he wouldn't be in danger." "Grandma, does that mean?" Agnes cut her off softly. "It means desperation finally found its reflection." Silence fell thick as iron dust. The air between them buzzed with fear, then resolve. "Do you believe her?" Agnes asked. "No," Nora said firmly. "I believe you. Always have." The words landed like sunlight in a cold room. Agnes smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "That's worth more than any trust fund." Nora reached across the table, grasping her grandmother's hand. "So what do we do?" Agnes met her gaze, those same brown eyes that had once blinked at her from a hospital bassinet 25 years ago. "We stand still," she said. "Let them run in circles. Truth doesn't chase, it waits." "But they're going to keep pushing," Nora whispered. "They'll twist everything." Agnes squeezed her hand. "Then we make sure they choke on their own story." A small laugh escaped Nora, half nervous, half awed. "You sound like someone gearing up for war." Agnes turned her eyes toward the window where the last rays of sunlight bled through the blinds, striping the room in gold and shadow. "Not war," she said quietly. "Reconstruction." The old clock ticked. A train horn groaned faintly from somewhere down by the river. Nora exhaled, shoulders finally easing. "You really think we can win this?" Agnes smiled, calm, knowing, unflinching. "Sweetheart, I worked 40 years in a steel mill, surrounded by men who thought I couldn't count past 10. Winning's easy once you stop asking for permission." The phone on the counter buzzed again. Evelyn's number. Agnes stared at it until it stopped ringing, the silence afterward heavier than sound. Then she whispered, half to herself, half to Nora. "Let them call. Let them threaten. Every ring just means they're running out of time." The town hall smelled of coffee polish and the faint metallic tang of microphones. Rows of folding chairs filled the room, a patchwork of faces: neighbors, old co-workers, members of the church choir. The low murmur of conversation fluttered like restless wings until it quieted the moment Agnes O'Malley stepped up to the podium. She didn't wear black like she had at every civic meeting before. Today, it was her husband's old denim jacket, frayed at the cuffs, iron blue under the fluorescent lights. The kind of color that belonged to work, not performance. Pastor Collins sat in the front row, his hands clasped tightly. Mr. Duarte from HR stood beside a detective and 2 local reporters. Nora hovered at the edge of the stage, phone in hand, recording every second. Agnes cleared her throat, her voice even but resonant through the small speaker system. "Most of you know me," she began. "I worked 30 years at the old plant before it closed. I balanced the payroll, made sure no man went home without what he earned. I wasn't born brave. I just kept records." A soft laugh rippled through the crowd, half empathy, half unease. She glanced down at her notes, then folded the paper and set it aside. "But today isn't about numbers. It's about the cost of silence." She took a slow breath. Last month, my son Sean O'Malley filed fraudulent documents claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my own finances. He forged signatures, faked a doctor's note, and used a notary who lost his license for falsifying papers. All so he could take what wasn't his. Gasps. One voice whispered, "Dear God." Agnes nodded. "I'm not here for pity. I'm here to put the truth on record before someone else rewrites it." She reached into her satchel and pulled out the envelope labeled "Fraud Chain, Preliminary." Papers rustled as she held it high for everyone to see. "I have proof." IP logs, forged seals, letters cross-signed by the same people who notarized his divorce. "It's all here." She placed the folder on the lectern like evidence before a jury. "But I'm not here just to expose him. I'm here to confess my part in how we got here." The room stilled. Even the old ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. Agnes's eyes found Pastor Collins's. 10 years ago, Sean stole $3,000 from the Community Scholarship Fund. Some of you remember when the money went missing and no one was ever charged. Murmurs rose, then hushed. "I knew," she said simply. "He told me he'd pay it back. He never did. I covered it with a check from our savings, mine and Ray's, because I thought protecting his name was protecting our family." Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "That was the first forgery I allowed. Not on paper here." She pressed her hand to her chest. A mother's signature written in gilt. Mr. Duarte lowered his gaze. Pastor Collins whispered something like a prayer. Nora's phone shook in her grip. Agnes continued, voice calm, stripped of sentiment. "For 10 years I called it love. But love that hides wrongdoing isn't love, it's fear, with a nicer name." The detective stepped forward slightly, eyes narrowing in respect more than scrutiny. She looked out at the crowd, meeting their gazes one by one. "I'm not ashamed of telling the truth. I'm ashamed it took me this long." A pause. Then she smiled faintly. "If Sean were here, I'd tell him this. You were born in a steel town. You should have known you can't shape something strong by hammering it with lies." From the back, someone began clapping, hesitant, awkward. Then another joined, and another. Within seconds, the hall filled with the uneven sound of hands meeting, echoing off the walls like a forge come alive again. Nora stepped forward, tears shining in her eyes, her voice breaking through the applause. "Grandma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," Agnes said gently, "because if I don't say it here, he'll keep telling the story everywhere else." She reached for her water, hand shaking now, not from weakness, but from release. "There's one last thing," she said, quieter. "I've already filed the trust paperwork. The money that used to belong to me is now locked under the Steel Mill Scholarship for young people who want to study trades, not scams." Gasps again, softer this time, mixed with admiration. "I named it after the plant that built this town," she continued. "Because steel bends, but it doesn't break. And neither do I." The reporter in the corner raised her hand. "Mrs. O'Malley?" she asked softly. "Aren't you afraid this will destroy your family's reputation?" Agnes smiled, a small, tired smile that looked almost peaceful. "Reputation is what people think of you. Legacy is what you leave behind. I'm done polishing reputation." Her gaze shifted to Nora. "I'm building legacy." Applause again, louder now, steadier like rainfall after drought. As she stepped down from the podium, Nora met her halfway, wrapping her arms around her grandmother. Agnes whispered into her ear, "It's done. The rest is theirs to reckon with." Outside, the cold wind off the Monongahela River sliced through the late afternoon, scattering yellow leaves across the courthouse steps. Agnes paused at the door, breathing it in. For the first time in years, the air tasted clean, like something burned away, leaving only steel and sky. She turned to Nora. "Now," she said softly, "let's go home." And as they walked down the stairs, the city bells began to ring, not mournfully this time, but with the heavy, triumphant rhythm of a hammer meeting metal again and again, declaring the birth of something stronger. The law office smelled of ink and old oak, a place where words carried weight and paper held power. Agnes sat across from Marla Keene again, sunlight sliding through the blinds, striping the desk in gold and shadow. The world outside felt slower now, like even time was pausing to listen. "It's done," Marla said, sliding a folder toward her. The Steel Mills Scholarship Trust is officially active. Your granddaughter's the primary trustee. Agnes nodded, her fingers brushing the embossed seal. The document looked plain, just paragraphs and signatures, but she knew it was heavier than any inheritance she'd ever written. Trades, not scams, she murmured. Let them build something real. Marla smiled. You've turned a family wound into a public legacy. That's rare, maybe Agnes said quietly. But it shouldn't be. The lawyer hesitated, then pulled out another paper. Before you go, you should see this. The bank just forwarded it this morning, a final withdrawal request. It came through last night. Agnes's eyes flicked to the date. Under his name, his and Evelyn's. Marla tapped the rejection stamp in red ink, denied. Fraud alert flagged. For a moment, the silence between them felt like justice itself, wordless, firm, irreversible. Agnes exhaled slowly. He's still digging. Yes, Marla said, but the ground's finally turned to iron. Agnes leaned back, gazing out the window at the city's skeletal skyline. You know, she said softly, Ray used to tell me steel is just dirt that refused to stay weak. Marla smiled. Then you're steel, Agnes. She laughed, a short, tired laugh that still sounded like freedom. No, I'm just the one who remembered how to hold the heat. She signed the last page, ink flowing steady and sure, then stood. Send him copies, she said. Let him see what strength looks like on paper. Outside, the wind off the river carried the faint clang of distant metal. Agnes paused on the sidewalk, folder tucked under her arm, eyes lifting toward the pale blue sky. For the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted by what she'd lost. She felt anchored by what she'd built. 3 days after the town hall, the story broke. Retired steel clerk exposes son's financial scheme, turns family scandal into scholarship fund. The headline ran on the front page of the Allegheny Gazette, complete with a photo of Agnes at the podium, her denim jacket and tired eyes suddenly iconic. By noon, her inbox overflowed, sympathy from strangers, apologies from neighbors, and buried among them one new email titled Family Resolution Proposal. It came from O'Malley Legal Counsel on behalf of Sean and Evelyn O'Malley. Agnes clicked. The email was clean, sterile, professional, the language of desperation wrapped in politeness. In the spirit of reconciliation and to preserve the dignity of all involved, our clients are prepared to negotiate a private settlement. Mrs. O'Malley agrees to dissolve the Steel Mill Scholarship Trust and reinstate prior estate arrangements from 2019. In exchange, all public statements and press communications will cease immediately, and no further legal actions will be pursued. We hope to handle this with maturity and mutual respect. O'Malley and Hensworth LLP. Agnes read it twice, maybe 3 times, letting each sentence roll through her like the echo of a hammer hitting cold iron. Mutual respect, she muttered. After theft, forgery, humiliation? The word dignity flashed in her mind, the very thing they'd tried to steal, now dangling as a bargaining chip. She opened a blank document and began typing, her fingers steady, her pulse calm. No, my dignity isn't collateral. 2 lines, no signature, no warmth. Truth didn't need punctuation. She printed it, signed by hand, scanned it again, and attached it to her reply. Then she typed 1 sentence in the email body. This is my final answer. Send. The whoosh of the sent message filled the room like a gavel drop. Outside, a crow perched on the power line, watching as if it too waited for a verdict. Agnes stared back through the window, unblinking. She had given her son every chance to grow. He had chosen to dig instead. Her phone buzzed minutes later, a single text from an unknown number. You've made a mistake, Mom. She smiled faintly, replying only, not this time. Then she switched the phone to silent, walked to her cabinet and retrieved the old family photo, the one from Sean's 10th birthday. Balloons, cake frosting on his cheeks, Ray's arm around them both. She looked at the picture for a long moment, then slid it into a folder marked Past Records, Closed. The act wasn't bitter. It was archival. When she returned to the window, dusk had settled over the steel town, orange light melting over rusted rooftops. A freight train moaned in the distance, its wheels grinding against the tracks like truth, dragging chains through time. Agnes whispered to the fading sky, "You can't blackmail someone who's already told the truth." Then she switched off the lamp. The room fell dark, quiet, dignified, like a verdict delivered without raising a voice. The letter came by post, the old-fashioned way, creased, handwritten, desperate. Agnes recognized her son's handwriting immediately, still neat, still pretending control. Mom, please, just one dinner. No lawyers, no press. Just us. I need to explain. You'll understand if you hear me out. Your son always, Sean. The paper smelled faintly of cologne and rain. She folded it once, twice, set it on the table beside her tea. The words looked harmless, almost tender, but years of deception had taught her danger often arrived dressed in apology. Nora found her staring at it when she stopped by that evening. You're not going, right? Agnes didn't answer immediately. The ticking wall clock filled the silence like a heartbeat waiting for permission. He asked for a dinner, Agnes said finally. In public. I'll go. Nora's voice rose. Why would you even? Because endings deserve witnesses, Agnes replied. And because I want to look him in the eye when I stop forgiving him. Nora's lips parted, but no protest came. The words carried too much finality. Agnes stood, took her coat from the hook. I already told him where. The diner on 5th. Bright lights. Too many people. Nowhere to hide. You're sure? Nora whispered. Agnes smiled faintly. I've been sure for 78 years. I just forgot for a while. Outside rain began again, soft, persistent, like the world rehearsing goodbyes. 5th Diner was the kind of place where time never moved, neon lights, buzzing waitresses calling everyone hon, and the smell of burnt coffee, thick enough to chew. Agnes sat in the corner booth back to the wall facing the door. She wore her gray wool coat and pearl earrings, the ones Ray gave her on their 25th anniversary. Her phone lay face down on the table, its voice recorder quietly blinking red beneath the napkin. Sean arrived 10 minutes late, rain dampening the shoulders of his leather jacket. He looked thinner, more frantic, his eyes darting around the diner like he was expecting witnesses. He slid into the booth opposite her, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mom, he said softly. You look good. Agnes stirred her tea. You look desperate. The waitress approached, poured coffee for both without asking, then moved away. The neon sign outside flickered, Eat Here, open 24/7, washing their faces in alternating hues of red and blue, like a silent police light. Sean sighed, fingers tapping the cup. I just wanted to talk. This whole thing's gotten out of control. Evelyn's scared. The lawyers, stop hiding behind names, Agnes interrupted. This isn't about Evelyn or the lawyers, it's about you. He frowned. I made mistakes, okay, I shouldn't have filed those papers. But you left me no choice. You froze everything. You made me look like a criminal. You are one, she said calmly. He flinched, eyes narrowing. You don't understand. I was trying to fix things. The debts. What debts? He hesitated, then rubbed his temples. After the divorce, things got messy. I borrowed money to start a business. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. But when the collectors came, so you forged my signature to save your credit score. Agnes's voice was soft but edged like glass. Sean's tone cracked. You've got no idea what kind of people I was dealing with. I just needed time. You've got the money. You wouldn't even have noticed if I'd moved a little. Agnes leaned forward. I noticed every time I gave you something and you turned it into proof that I'd always give again. He looked away, jaw tight. You act like I wanted to hurt you. He stopped himself, realizing too late. Agnes's gaze sharpened. Say it. He met her eyes, voice dropping to a whisper. I just used what I had. Your name still opens doors, Mom. The recorder blinked under the napkin. Every syllable landed clean. For a moment, neither spoke. The diner's soundtrack filled the silence, cutlery clinking, a baby crying, the hiss of coffee being refilled. Then Agnes exhaled. You forged my name, falsified my doctor's note, and bribed a suspended notary. That's not using what you have, Sean. That's stripping what I built. He looked up sharply. So what now? You gonna turn me in? Let your own son go to prison? Her voice didn't waver. If that's what justice decides, then yes. God, you're cold. No, she said, eyes steady. I'm finally warm enough for myself. The waitress passed by, refilling cups, sensing tension but saying nothing. The neon lights flickered again. Red, blue, like the world itself couldn't decide whether to warn or absolve them. Sean's hand shook as he reached across the table. "Mom, please. I can fix this. I'll pay it all back. Just drop the charges, dissolve that damn trust. I'll make it right." Agnes looked down at his trembling fingers and then at her untouched tea. "You can't fix what you keep denying," she said. "And I don't want your money, Sean. I want my name back." He slumped back, face tightening into anger. "You're destroying this family." She tilted her head. "No, I'm just not letting it destroy me anymore." The rain outside picked up, streaking the window behind him. It looked like tears on glass, too symmetrical to be real. Sean stood abruptly, his chair scraping the tile. "You'll regret this." Agnes's voice was calm, final. "That's your favorite prophecy, isn't it?" He stared at her for a long second, then turned and stormed out, the diner bell chiming above the door like an old verdict delivered once more. Agnes waited until the sound of his car faded. Then she lifted the napkin and stopped the recording. She listened to the final seconds, his voice breaking her voice steady, the clatter of dishes behind truth being spoken aloud. She saved the file under one word: confession. Sliding her phone into her purse, she whispered to herself, "No need to shout when the evidence speaks." Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. The neon light flickered one last time. Open 24/7, as if to remind her that justice too sometimes stays open all night. Morning light crawled across the kitchen table, touching the edges of Agnes's laptop. She sat upright, glasses low on her nose, her phone connected to the computer. The recording, confession.wav, blinked on the screen like a pulse. She attached it to an email addressed to two names, Marla Keene and Detective Ruiz. Her message was short: recorded at 5th Diner, 7:12 p.m., voluntary confession. Do what's necessary. She pressed send without hesitation. The whoosh felt lighter than any breath she'd taken in years. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. It was Marla. "Got it?" the lawyer said. "That's everything we need. You did the right thing, Agnes." "I just did what I should have done 10 years ago," Agnes replied softly. An hour passed before another call came. Detective Ruiz. His tone was professional but edged with respect. "We've confirmed the recording," he said. "It's admissible. We're issuing a temporary hold order on Mr. O'Malley. He'll be questioned by noon." Agnes closed her eyes. "Thank you, Detective. Just make sure he's treated like anyone else. No special kindness, no cruelty. Just the truth." Ruiz paused. "That's rare, Mrs. O'Malley wanting fairness over revenge." She smiled faintly. "Revenge doesn't rebuild anything." After hanging up, she called Nora. "It's over?" her granddaughter asked. "Not over," Agnes said, looking out the window as sunlight broke through the gray. "But it's finally moving in the right direction." She ended the call, poured herself a fresh cup of tea, and whispered to the empty room. "Justice doesn't need a parade. Just a paper trail." By noon, the story had spread faster than the church bells could ring. Local woman's recording exposes financial fraud by her son. The same diners that once whispered pity now murmured awe. At the hardware store, someone said, "Took more guts than half the council combined." Evelyn was seen leaving the courthouse in sunglasses, her posture stiff, her composure cracked. Sean, escorted in handcuffs, kept his head down as flashes from local reporters lit up the gray sidewalk. Agnes stayed home, curtains open, radio off. She didn't need to watch the fallout. She'd already lived the collapse. That afternoon, a soft knock came. Pastor Collins stood on the porch, hat in hand, humility in his eyes. "Mrs. O'Malley," he began, voice gentle. "I came to apologize. I listened to the wrong confessions." Agnes opened the door wider, sunlight brushing her shoulder. "We all did, Reverend, but at least you came to make it right." He smiled faintly, relief flickering through the guilt. "You taught this town something about faith we never preached. Faith in God." He shook his head. "Faith in truth." Agnes nodded, eyes kind but unwavering. "It's the only kind that survives a storm." As he walked away, she looked down the quiet street, the same road that once carried rumors, now carrying silence. It wasn't peace, exactly, but something sturdier. She whispered, Let the truth rest a while. Evening settled soft over the neighborhood, the kind that turned windows into mirrors and streets into memory. Agnes sat by the table reading, glasses perched low, when Nora arrived, carrying a folded newspaper pressed against her chest. "Front page," she said, breathless. "You're famous now." Agnes smiled, taking the paper carefully as if fame were something fragile. Across the front, the headline read, "The Woman Who Refused to Be Erased." Below it, a photograph: Agnes at the podium, denim jacket, gray hair haloed by the fluorescent light. "She got your good side," Nora said, laughing softly through tears. "My good side's the one still breathing," Agnes replied. They sat together at the kitchen table, the same spot where plans, pain, and tea had all been poured in equal measure. The article praised her courage, mentioned the scholarship, quoted Pastor Collins's apology. When Nora finished reading aloud, she unfolded a small frame from her bag. Inside was a printed photo of the scholarship certificate, the Steel Mill Scholarship Fund, established by Agnes O'Malley, 2025. Nora handed her a hammer and nail. "Where do you want it?" Agnes looked around the living room, her gaze landing on the empty wall above Ray's old armchair. "Right there," she said, "above what's gone, so he can see what stayed." Together they hung the frame. It caught the lamplight just so, glowing gold against the fading wallpaper. Nora whispered, "You did it, Grandma." Agnes shook her head gently. "We did. I just made sure our name means something again." The clock ticked quietly, steady as breath. Outside, the night hummed with life, continuing. No applause, no spectacle, just peace, earned the hard way. Morning light spilled across the kitchen table, golden and soft. A cup of tea steamed beside a sheet of stationery. Agnes sat in her robe, pen poised, the house utterly still. Her handwriting was slower now but steady, each stroke deliberate, as if the words themselves were an act of balance. "My dearest Nora, if you're reading this, I'm probably sitting on the porch pretending to nap, or maybe I've wandered off somewhere quiet. Either way, don't worry. I left this note because every story deserves its last paragraph." She smiled as she wrote, pausing to listen to the creak of the old house, the same one that had held anger, laughter, and truth without collapsing. "You come from steel, not the kind they pour in factories, but the kind life forges in silence. Whenever the world tries to bend, you remember this: the truth already knows your name. You never need to shout it." Her hand trembled slightly, but she finished the letter with a final line that felt like a benediction. "Love without blindness, forgive without forgetting, stand without waiting to be told, you can. Grandma." She folded the letter neatly, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it under the framed certificate on the wall. Outside, the first light of morning touched the Steel River far below, glittering like a signature written by the sun. Agnes exhaled slowly, her work complete. Then she whispered, almost to the light itself, "Now the story can rest." And somewhere between the ticking clock and the distant hum of a freight train, peace settled in quiet, unremarkable absolute. How did this story touch you? Tell us in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10 if it moved your heart. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the E so you won't miss our next emotional story. And before you go, click on the end screen to discover more powerful, heartwarming tales waiting just for you. See you in the next story.